Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm just getting my computer and everything set up. I'm doing a live stream session of one of my books, Iron Catacomb. I use a lot of dictation when writing. That way I can crank out a lot of words so I can deliver books quicker to you. Now, one of the things about this is people always ask, Aaron, how can you do 5,000 to 7,000 words a day? Isn't that all generated and creative? No, I don't need to do that. I use dictation. You can see, there you go, got a headset, and what I did is I took my headset with a plug that was totally useless to me. I mounted up a Sennheiser lavalier microphone, USB-C, and I hooked that to my iPad right here. So let's see if you can see my iPad right here. Yep. And that's what I do. And then I've got a connector. I finally found a connector that actually has USB-C power and USB-C data. USB-C was supposed to solve everything. It's actually made stuff way worse. But this is not a rant on technology. Instead, this is about my story. So I've got a photo of me in chainmail holding a sword. Let me show you that, because that's just darn fun. Yeah, there you go. Oh, maybe it's just copying and pasting me. There you go. So this was taken in a city in Germany called Rothenburg Ob der Tauber. Everybody just calls it Rothenburg. Why a city has 4 names, I don't know, but whatever. That's Germany. And I was in Germany a short while ago and touring around, and I decided, you know what? I've got this picture posted all over the place. People ask about it, and I said, why don't I just, make a story about it? So I came up with the idea of the story of Iron Catacomb. This is a story based on Rothenburg's history, a place that I actually discovered, an underground passage, and add some fictional elements to it. But my goal of taking you to Rothenburg, Germany, is to have you experience what it's like to be in medieval Germany. And I was there when it was raining and storming. Usual Germany sort of experience in September. That's part of it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do dictating and show you the experience of how I create these stories. I use dictations with my headsets right here, and my headset right here. I've got my lavalier, so you can actually hear me talking. I can't do dual mode. And I'm going to show you my outline. This is literally how I do it. So I break my stories into 3 acts, classic structure, and Act 2 has a Part A and Part B, and at the middle is the big twist where the story's going along and then like every good story. And I'll show you right here. I've got my outline, see, Iron Catacomb outline. Act 1, Breakaway, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. It's hard for me to say there. Going to do some stunt action. It's going to be really fun there. Act 2, 3. And then where is it? Act 3. There you go. So now that I've got this all outlined, and it took a while to generate the outline because I needed some historical connection. And this is also based on the Night Watchman Tour. This Night Watchman Tour is super famous. People literally come from all around the world to do the Night Watchman Tour. It's pretty cool. Alrighty, so I've finished on chapter, where did I finish on chapter? Chapter 10, so now I'm into chapter 11, and this is where the big pivot happens. Now, since I've been dictating and writing my story, I found my outline, had a couple things, so I've had to shuffle things around, and that's okay. So let me fire up my dictation software so we can get right down to it. Let's see, burst towards the exits, second act, surface pursuit, perfect. So we just had a conflict in the catacombs, a real sword fight. I thought, you know what, we're in an armor shop. Rothenburg, Germany has the best armor shop I've ever found in Europe. I've traveled to Europe a lot. And you'd think England would have all this stuff. They don't. I don't know. Maybe they're afraid of swords and shields. Who knows? But, whatever. Commentary. Love England, but, where are the swords? Hello. Germany's store in Rothenburg. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me where there's another better store. I would love it. So what I'm going to do is get on to dictating here. What I do is I just start my dictation software so I can record my voice, and it takes care of a little bit of the mess and the speech tags and all that. And then I just copy it in the Scrivener, and then I edit it later. It's a bit of a messy process, but there's no way I can hand type 7,000 words a day. I'd be like, oh, I'd be dead. It's just too hard to do. So instead, I dictate and crank it out. And I'm looking at the sun, so hopefully it doesn't come through here and blind me. So I've got to record. And the cool thing about this dictation software is it not only converts my voice, just like you can do voice dictation on your phone. Yeah, check this out. Did you know that you can actually do this? This is some voice dictation on my phone just to demonstrate what you can do with your phone nowadays. Okay. Let me enlarge the text view here. Title. Okay, there you go. This is some voice dictation on my phone to demonstrate what you can do nowadays. Now, this all sounds great, but when you're hammering away and doing that, this eventually falls apart and it develops a lot of typos and errors. So instead of worrying about that, I just have a software that records my voice and transcribes the material. And one of my watchers, Melissa Cook, the author of she wrote a book on Alaska. Oh my gosh, so embarrassing. Her book's called The Call of the Last Frontier. She's requesting that I do split screen. As soon as I can figure out how to split screen my iPad and do that, I guess I can buy another webcam and show it and then put it on OBS and another webcam. Yeah, maybe I could. We'll see. That'd be kind of cool. So maybe one day. But actually, I will hold the screen up so you can actually see the dictation. Oh, maybe I could take my webcam off. We'll figure that out. In fact, let's do that. Why not? So I'm going to do that. Iron Catacomb, Chapter 11. And yeah, why not? I'm going to point this downward. I don't know. Oh, it's going to be a little hard. We'll try it. Why not? Just do things on the fly. What's the worst that happens, right? Okay. Okay, let's start this. All right, so here you go. You're literally going to see me typing my words. And of course, anything I say is pretty much going to be thing. And we're talking about books here, so yeah, let's just tilt that down a bit. There we go. Okay, Chapter 11. Right. Grant and Louise raced through the armory shop and said thank you very much to the clerk who was on the phone yelling at the police to come. The problem is Rothenburg inside the medieval gates did not have a real police force. They were out in the city, of course, but getting into the city was a bit of a challenge because the narrow streets from the 1200s and on are just not very conducive to cars. So as they raced through, they gave the clerk their armor and their swords back, and they said, hey, sorry we fought with them, just charge it to your credit card. And the clerk still looked shocked, but he said, thank you very much, Grant and Louise, as they raced outside. Now, by the time they'd gotten out of the catacomb that the two men had knocked over all the weapons and forced them to slow down, they came onto a rainy street, and there was nothing. They didn't see anybody walking around. They didn't of interest. There were plenty of tourists walking around, people coming out of the Cathay Wolfhart shop, people coming out of the remaining shops in the Schneeball store just down the street from the armory shop, and there was no one. Grant and Louise both put their hands on their waist and leaned over smelling the wet pavement as the scent of wet soil drafted up to them, and they started to debate, well, what in the heck do we do? These guys are out here. And they agreed, they keyed in their headsets and activated them to split up, and that way they could cover more ground. And they began walking. They looked down the street where they were, and most of the stores were already closed. So they didn't bother going that way. It was too far to get all the way to the gate, where the social media people always take photographs of the famous intersection. And so they began walking towards the town square, and Grant said, okay, I'll cut to the right and head up towards the one entrance. You work on the town square here, and once you get up on the stand where the night watchman tour started, and just keep a lookout. Roger, can do. Luis jogged over carefully, not trying to slip on any more cobblestones, while Grant started hoofing it towards the gate. And they both looked about, and Grant, do you see anything? No. How about you, Luis? No, this is not going to go well. These guys, we had them so close, we literally got in a sword fight. And all of a sudden, Luis yells into his headset, Grant, I got them. They're cruising through. They're hiding in a crowd. Grant immediately snaps around and then races back to the town square. And Luis didn't want to get into a fight because if the men were armed, they didn't want to have a hostage situation, so they hovered back just a little bit. And they started walking. Grant came around the town square where there's a large crowd of people wandering around. And all of a sudden, they hear the screeching of tires. And everybody froze because normally the sound of screeching of tires in a medieval city is pretty surprising, so they didn't actually know what to do. This is something they'd never experienced before. And apparently no one else, including the tour guides, had either. Everyone pretty much froze. And all of a sudden a black sedan came tearing around the corner. Boom. There we go. Okay, so there you go. You literally saw the live stream transcription of how I do this. Now, let me put this up here. Okay, here we go. Iced tea in the morning is perfect. All right, so now what I do is I take my transcription from my software, and I also save the audio file to my Dropbox folder. That way, in case something goes horribly wrong, well, hopefully not, I've got a total backup of this, because it's quite a bit of an effort. So I'm going to copy that, and I need to go into my Scrivener software. Scrivener is a software that quite a few writers use. It's kind of way overpowered for most of what I do, but I love it because it hooks into my Dropbox account. It does a lot of stuff here. Let's see, where are we? And I can shuffle things around. I can do writing on my phone. Scrivener literally writes or allows me to write on my phone anywhere. It links up to my laptop, iPad, blah, 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 this whole thing. So it's pretty slick. All right. So this is how I do it. And you can see I'm now synchronizing the files. Hopefully everything works. It'd be funny if this blew up like on the live stream. That wouldn't be the first time things have happened. Oh, well, it's bothering synchronizing. So as you can see, the challenge of doing dictating is that I have to add senses, the 5 senses, taste, smell, sight, hearing, and touch into this. Now when I'm doing dictation, sometimes I don't quite get that in there. And so what I do is I rough this in. Then once it's in Scrivener, I sit down and begin typing up and adding my notes, and then start to bomb it out. And I smooth the wording out because as you can hear, that was pretty rough. But my whole goal is to get material on the screen. Great. Total technological meltdown. Open anyway. Perfect. Raw. Chapter 10, chapter 11. Okay, good. Chapter 11 text. I've copied my text. Okay, copy the text. paste it into Scrivener, and voila, 646 words. Now, I obviously got the dictation where I was actually talking to you guys on the live stream there. So that's pretty funny, but I will obviously delete that because that would be pretty odd in a fiction book, at least my fiction books, because I do action, adventure, thrillers, but I also do write romance, so maybe that could fall under a funny situation. We'll see. All right, and now I've got the dictation into my software, and I'm ready to go for another session. Now, I will tell you my dictation is much smoother when I don't have the camera on. There is a thing called the observer effect, where just like when you're playing music or you're speaking, yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, I've done professional speaking for a decade, and I get on stage and you get a little bit nervous, but then you get into it and like, yeah! So being able to pump these books out in this way to bring them quicker to you, oh my gosh, what a godsend. I totally love this. Let's see, live author writing. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Cool. Perfect. See what else here. Okay, well, on to the next session. No reason to mess around because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more chapters to go. I did almost 7,000 words yesterday, 6,700. And I want to get Iron Catacomb done so I can get the book launched because I need Iron Catacomb so I can launch Bone Road, which you can check out links below in the description to my store. Because I need, one of my business models is I need the next book in series ready for you to pre-order. So once I launch the book, there's this whole process of psychology. So I kind of like, honestly, I mess with your head. That's my whole goal. All right. And why do you say that's my goal? Because you buy my books, you listen to my audiobooks for an endorphin and dopamine rush. And you get excitement in your limbic system, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. At least that's my goal. So yes, my job is to emotionally tweak and tune you so when you read and you flip the pages or you flip across your Kindle or your pad or whatever the heck you're reading on, you have an exciting time, whatever it might be. And that's the goal. Now, as you can see, when I'm doing this, it's very dramatic in your face, and that's the point. The more dramatic I can make it in your experience, the better it can be. But I have to have pauses in my longer books so the exciting times are actually more exciting. So let's go on with The Surface Pursuit, Vision Blurred, Terror Startled. Okay, good. Here we go. The next chapter is chapter 12. All right. Catacomb, chapter 12. A black sedan tore around the corner, causing the crowd to scatter. It didn't necessarily drive towards anyone, but people instinctively reacted because on the wet pavement, the car tore around the corner. The sound of rubber screeching on wet cobblestones and the thudding sound of the rumble, rumble, rumble as the car tore around was quite unreal because in cobblestone streets in medieval and modern Europe, there's a certain thumping frequency that people get used to. But when a car speeds up and squeals on those tires and it echoes around the tall buildings and narrow passageways of Rothenburg, the sound is much more shocking. So as that car tore around, Grant could see the driver, older male. He had a beard and a mask on, so he was completely identifiable, fishtailed around the crowd. And just then, the two men who were hiding in the crowd broke away, and Grant yelled to Luis in his earpiece, "This is it. This is our chance. Let's go. Let's get them." So they ran across, and people who were standing around weren't exactly sure what to do, but they saw a conflict coming, so they instinctively recoiled back. And the crowd parted like the Red Sea, where the two forces were colliding. Grant and Luis were able to intercept the men before they reached the car, and bodies crashed into each other. The one man who they had pursued earlier no longer had the duffel bag. He had transferred it to the man receiving the duffel bag as a mule who was doing the transfer, and they broke out into a fist fight, into a scuffle. The goal was to capture the duffel bag and capture the duffel bag from them. If they could get the men arrested, that would be even better, but they wanted to recover the stolen item that they'd been following for weeks and didn't want to have this get away again. So as the men pushed and shoved each other, the man took a swing at Grant. He dodged and got caught in the shoulder, and it knocked him slightly over, while Luis was faring better. He was fighting with the original man who was the courier, and Luis being so much taller than him, Luis could almost just hold the man out. They fought for only a few moments, but quickly the two men realized that they were in a losing fight, especially the man Luis was fighting. Just then the driver got out of the car and started yelling at the men in a language that they both, Grant didn't understand, and they both looked at each other because in the distance they could hear sirens wailing. And they yelled at each other a few times. The man who originally chased simply abandoned Luis and jumped in the car. The driver continued to scream at the man with the bag. They yanked back and forth, but as he glanced down the street where the armory or the armor store was, he realized this was a losing proposition, and he swore something in what sounded like a Middle Eastern language, and then shoved the bag into Grant's hands and pushed him back and ran towards the car and jumped in. Just as they slammed it, Grant held the bag and threw it over his shoulder. And Louis said, let's go after him. Boom. Okay, now. Chase not over, running fights. Oh boy. Yeah, this is the hard part because I've got to get action in here, make things keep going. It's a little bit challenging. I'm going to have to work on this one a little bit. But that's okay. It's part of the experience. Plus, doing this live streaming is pretty funny. This is so much more difficult versus me just thinking about it, but it makes it more fun, that's for sure. That's another 587 words. And, oops, I forgot to turn my Pomodoro sand timer. I love using sand timers, even though I've got a watch, and I've got another watch, and another watch, it's all about the time. But the sand timer is really fun to use. And it keeps me focused on what I'm doing. Let's see. Ooh, I may have made a mistake. I'm going to have to make that chapter 13. That was a mistake. Oh, shoot, what do I do? Yeah, okay. Chapter 13. Good. So now you saw one of my solid mistakes. In my outline, I had a running fight going on before they actually got in the car. So I'm going to need to fix that pretty solidly. Well, this is all part of the... Oh, hi, Kelly. I've got Kelly, my girlfriend, from the what's her channel? The Kiki Gallery Patterns. Kelly designs knit patterns, so if you're a knitter, check out her website, thekikigallery.com. Links below, so if you know somebody who's into knitting, she sells the pattern designs, and they're super cool. I think one of her most famous patterns is a squishy split rib. That thing, oh, and KG Beanie, I believe that sells well too. So always fun. That's she's a great designer. Okay, so running fight. Oh shoot. Yeah. Okay, I gotta mess this up. So I'm gonna have to reorder this. I have to do some dictation to correct this mistake because dictating with you has made me totally distracted, which is pretty funny. So running fight, narrow escape, melee. Yeah, I need to extend this melee just a bit. Otherwise the book's too short. So let's have some more fun with this. into view. Yep. Yeah, that didn't quite work. So we'll forge on. Chapter 13. So this isn't going to make any sense to you whatsoever, because the scene that I had where Grant and Louise fought the men who are getting in the car, that will now be reversed, and I'm going to change the order of the chapters because I realized I need some more build-up in this. That's all part of the fun. Let's see, so Iron Catacomb, chapter 13. Okay. As Grant continued walking down the passageway, or the main walkway towards the gate where the main grass area is, he kept talking to Louise, saying, "Hey, have you got anything? Have you got anything?" Louise said, "No, I'm starting to go up and down the streets, but there's a lot of ground to cover because there are a couple side alleys that make this super difficult." And Grant said, "Yeah, I know. This is not a good situation. I wish we were able to put a tracker on these guys. That would have made it a lot easier." Yeah, no kidding. If I could have snagged one into the bag while they were fighting. But Grant joked, "Well, don't worry. I'm sure in a sword fight, King Arthur and Sir Lancelot had time to put an air tag into their opponents to track them as well." That's funny. Grant looked in a shop, and then he saw the bookstore, and he thought, I better drop into here. Not that these guys are going to be shopping for books, but you never know. So Grant wandered in and waved at the shopkeeper. She'd talked to him earlier. They'd been in looking for some information on Rothenburg, and Grant came up, and his German was terrible, so he apologized and spoke in English and asked the shopkeeper if she'd seen two men, and he described them, one taller, one shorter. The taller one had a bag, and she said, "Oh yeah, actually, they came in, they looked around a bit, and then they kept going. They left the store." Grant said, "Thank you very much." He spun on his heels and bolted out of the door, and he stopped, and he said, "Which way were they going?" And she said, "Towards the city gate." And Grant didn't see him, so he was kind of surprised. So as he came out and around the corner, all of a sudden the two men burst out and knocked him against the wall and started pummeling him. The one man pulled a knife and tried to slice at Grant. He was able to dodge back, but it caught his shirt, and it tore across his shirt and then snipped a tiny cut in his shoulder. He yelled, and Luis yelled into the earpiece, "Grant, are you okay?" Grant said, "No, I've got a little bit of company. Come down towards the hotel we're staying at. This is where these guys are." So while Grant was fighting the men off, he grabbed what did he grab? He grabbed a metal stanchion that was sitting by, by one of the restaurants, and he yanked it out of the ground because it was only temporary, and started using that as a weapon. And Grant yelled out, "Luis, hurry up, get down here. I've got 2-to-1. These guys are armed with knives." And Luis yelled out in his earpiece, "I thought these guys dropped their knives." And said, "No, apparently they're pretty well armed." Luis kept fighting back, and while they were doing this, people in the restaurant completely scattered and screamed. The one man, the taller man with the bag, walked around and flanked Grant and attempted to hit him, but just then an American saw what was going on, and the man threw a dinner plate at the duffel-carrying man and struck him in the side and distracted him. Grant looked around, the man waved, "Hey, nothing to do but help, a U.S. Marine." Grant said, "Thanks, appreciate that." But just as they were doing that, the man came up and shoved Grant on the slick surface, and he went stumbling. The two men took off and ran back towards the town square because there was a massive crowd coming through from the town gate, making it impossible for them to get through. That's better. Okay, good. Let's see. Ooh, yeah, let me put in the chat here because I capture the gallery. I'm going to put the chat in the chat. This is Kelly's link here. So hopefully that link stays alive so you can check it out. I'll put that in the description. when I come to the end of this chat. And so that way, if you are into knit patterns, check it out. Okay, so much better. Now, chapter 14 makes much more sense. Or no, chapter 12 makes much more sense when I've got chapter 13. Because like in all good books, the bad guys have to get away multiple times to make this work. This is going to take some serious editing, but that's okay. Okay, the narrow escape. Stone wall, perfect. Oh wait, let me tell you how many words that was. Ooh, whoopsie. Chapter 13, copy, words, boom, another 643 words. Ooh, baby. All right, so we've got 11, 12, 13. So you're literally experiencing what it's like to watch me dictate. So chapter 11 was 601 words. Chapter 12 is 587. Chapter 13, 643. So heading towards 1,800 words. And we're not even barely through my 25-minute Pomodoro. Check that out. I love the sand trickling away. It's very symbolic. I want to put candles behind my cuckoo clock because I bought this cuckoo clock in the Black Forest in a city called Freiburg. Classic product. But I've got these cool LED candles that actually physically flicker, and I want to put them in there for a little bit of ambiance. Just something alive. Makes it kind of fun. All right, so let's get a narrow escape here. Ooh, I need to block the car. That's the one problem. I couldn't figure it out. Now I figure it out live. This is pretty fun. Okay, narrow escape. The villain's trying to rip the bag. Perfect. Oh, yeah, this is a bit of a mess, but that's okay. Chapter 14. Let's see, Iron Catacomb. Chapter 14. Oh, cover reveal. Ooh, cover reveal. Yeah. Okay, I need to do the cover reveal. It's in the thumbnail, but might as well just show you now. This is always fun. The cover isn't completely done. I've got my designer working on it. We need to put in some tweaks. But I'm going to show you the cover just because why not? It's all part of the fun, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of challenge. It's not just writing. I have to have marketing material, keywords, SEO, YouTube videos. I have a TikTok channel. I've got an Instagram channel, Facebook, all this stuff. So the writing is like just a piece of the pie. Where is the cover? Mock-up, ebook. Hello, cover. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Let me brighten up my phone so you can see it. Okay. And there you go. Iron Catacomb. You see the sedan racing out. You see the teeth of the portcullis there with the wall of Rothenburg, and you can see the night watchman. The original design had a spear, but the night watchman actually carries a halberd, so I need to have that corrected, so my designer is working on that right now. Yeah. Now, I took some artistic license for sure, but, why not? The goal of thrillers isn't necessarily to be realistic, it is to get you a thrill. So there you go. You now have the cover reveal. Okay, back to my scrambles in the vehicle. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is definitely going to need some work. Once Grant picked himself up, the crowd was partying pretty wildly. The people up and down the street weren't exactly sure what was going on because they heard yelling, but everybody stopped and gawked like all good people do. And so the two men running through the crowd, people weren't exactly sure. But then Grant yelled, "Stop," and of course they didn't stop. So he continued to run on, all while the beating rain started to intensify and drive into his eyes. Grant knew that the other men were having the same difficulty because the cobblestones were now super slick from the driving rain that had been pouring down for a couple hours now. tourists were battling it out, and they had their umbrellas out because it wasn't very windy, which blockaded their view and made it much more difficult. But the men were starting to become much more aggressive, and they were slamming through bodies. So there were men yelling and women screaming not too far ahead, and Grant, not wanting to knock anybody over or hurt anyone, did his best to weave through the crowd. That's one of the challenges he faced, is not turning into the exact criminal that he was pursuing. So more than once he had caught a woman who had walked out of the Kathy Wolfhart store earlier and saved her, but also there was another man that he saw who was elderly, who had just gotten knocked over, and he stopped just to pick him up, get him dusted off and get him stable, and then continued the pursuit. And Grant called out into his earpiece, "Luis, I hope you guys, you got a beat on these guys because they're creating quite the melee." And Luis said, "Don't worry, I'm in position, but there's a massive crowd coming in, so I don't know exactly how we're going to do this, because they're armed. If they take a hostage, this is going to go really bad." And Grant said, "I know. I have no idea what we're going to do. Did you call in the police?" And Luis said, "Yeah, the shop owner did that, but who knows how long it's going to take them, because the crowds are pretty crushing here. It might not be an easy one for them to take care of at all." And Grant called out, "Well, that's the best we're going to do." He continued to Grant continued to huffle down, and he ran past a couple who were animatedly arguing because their Schneeball collection had gotten knocked to the ground, and it was all spread out. The rain was driving on the powdered sugar and melting the pastry into the cement, and other people were standing around clucking their tongues. Just the absolute shame of the experience. Lots of animated voices in German and other languages. There were also a group of Chinese tourists who were following a little yellow flag pin, who were now yelling at full volume as the men had torn through earlier. So Grant knew exactly where the men were, because there's so many people in the city that the chaos was pretty intense, and the scent of fear started prickling out, because as Grant ran past one group, the man said, "Maybe they're terrorists," and all of a sudden the voices got much more animated, and people started shuffling and running back and forth, because after several terrorist attacks in Europe over the past couple of years, people were much more cagey and aware of what was going on. So as Grant approached the square, he called into his earpiece, "Luis, where are you? I saw those guys disappear into the crowd, but from my vantage point, I could see them, but as soon as I had to hop down off the town hall squares, they just disappeared and they're buried. They're impossible to see." "Well, do your best, buddy. I'll be there in just a moment." Boom. Okay. Oop, finish. Yay. Transcription finished. Chapter 14. Yeah, chapter 12 is absolutely going to have to get mixed into chapter 15, because that's when things get really exciting. Okay, here we go. Chapter 14. Another 686 words, baby. Ka-ching. All right, I'll show you that. Switch over to OBS. Let's see, 686 words. There you go. So that's the thing about my chapters. For my action adventure, I do not, especially the SERA Archives, I do not like long chapters, because the whole point is flip, 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 and you come to an end of a chapter, and then you have to decide, do I keep reading or do I go to sleep? And then all you do is you go flip, flip, flip. Oh, it's only 3 pages? Oh, geez, I might as well keep reading. Yes, so my goal is that I mess with your head, mess with your psychology, mess with your limbic system, because in my signing events, I have a UV ink stamp that you can't even see until you put it under my special black light. I have a scratch and sniff sticker, so you can actually smell and attaches to you. There's a embosser that I stamp my books with, so you can feel it. And I tried to figure out the taste, and about the best I've come up with is just nice sharp mints, because don't want to have people touching and handling things multiple to, of course, after the pandemic, you don't want to spread any disease, and I don't want to get sick either. So trying to make it the most sanitary experience while still having a personal experience with my readers as they come to signing. So I'm going to have to make a video showing my signing experience, what it's like. And I do sound too. There's a sound element as well. All right, here we go. So chapter 15, the card peeling out. You still have time. The time is passing. The Pomodoro is 2/3 of the way done. And what I do is when I'm done, I either go play the violin or piano, and I do it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes as a treat to myself. So I'm going to pause the Pomodoro because I'm going to cheat. I treat myself so that way I also train myself to write, but I look forward to something. I'm learning violin, learning piano. I'm getting better slowly but slowly. And so I do my writing, and then I go as a distraction, and I hack my brain. They say hack, but it's not really. Because as I work hard, my productivity starts to tank, and if I push it too hard, my productivity goes completely in the toilet. But if I take pauses and then come back to my work, I actually retain my efficiency. That's how I'm able to crank 6,000, 7,000 words a day, is I use all the things that humans have built into them as an approach to say, hey, this is how you do it. And I just know that I'm human and that's what I need to do. And I figured that over time, this actually works very well. So now, car, fishtail, spring. Okay, good. So chapter 12 is now going to have to go into chapter 14. So really, yeah, chapter 12 is already taken care of. Sweet. Chapter 15, the Pomodoro continues. Pomodoro is check out the light. I like that slash light across me. Pomodoros or tomato timers, tomato timers, Italian. This guy Pomodoro, whatever, came up with the concept, and it totally works. Check it out. Okay, last second. All right, here we go. The car is going to have to drive through the crowd. Nobody's going to get killed. I don't like massacring innocent people in my books. My books are not overtly gory or ultra violent. That's just not somewhere I want to go. Some competitors, especially dark romance, whoo, boy, I read a couple samples of that, and that is not my thing. My romance is, I don't do sweet romance, but between 2 and 3 chilies, more action centric and travel and adventure centric. Think Romancing the Stone, a little bit more modernized, but still thoroughly entertaining. That's how I roll. Chapter 15. Okay. Iron Catacomb, chapter 15. The car spun around the square as people screamed and scattered. Bags went flying. One tour guide leaned over, and as her tour group was getting scattered, she started smashing on the car in utter anger at the driver ruining her tour. He didn't pay her any heed, but she did actually lay the flag across the side and leave a pretty good dent and a scratch across it, which gave her some satisfaction. The driver was actually actively gunning for Grant, who had to dive out of the way. He rumbled or rolled across the cobblestone just as the door and windows to the town hall or the mayor's home had just opened, making the famous reenactment where the town mayor drinks alcohol to save the town. It's the craziest thing ever. And the driver spun around twice trying to get a bearing on where to go. He began fishtailing towards the fountain at the one corner or one edge of the square and slid to it and slightly bounced off of it trying to get through the crowd. And just then a vehicle came up, a delivery van came up from the one entrance where the where the main strip of hotels were, and that's where the driver was gunning it to try and escape. That's where he came through, but he came to a screeching halt. Grant and Luis knew they only had moments, so Luis raced up and took out his translator, the LEX4, and got up as close as he could, as he dared, as the car began spinning around, and did his best to smash the window with it, and he threw it as hard as he could. And Luis used to play baseball in high school, and the unit uselessly hit the side window and bounced off. This absolutely stunned Luis, because that amount of force hitting that window should have easily smashed it, but his unit just clattered across the wet cobblestones completely soaked. This stunned him, and Grant, as he regained his senses, as he stood up, he yelled out, "What the heck is that?" And Luis said, "Armor. These guys aren't just anybody. They're ready for battle." And Grant said, "Great, just when it starts to get exciting." He picked up the duffel again and started running towards the melee, not sure what he was going to do against an armored car without any weapons or anything to stop them, or a spike strip. They didn't have a lot of options, and I think he knew the driver knew that. The driver gunned it in reverse, people screamed again, and he whipped around and pulled the car to the street where the armory was. And then he slid backwards, and then in a moment the driver must have punched it forward, because he revved the engine and dropped it into drive, and the car peeled out and fishtailed through the crowd as people dove left and right. And Grant and Luis gave chase. There was such a thick crowd and the street was narrow. Grant knew, and he could tell that even though the car was armored, you could tell that the driver didn't actually want to damage his vehicle, because once he got out on the highway, he would blend in. It was a classic black sedan, a German sedan, but if he had serious damage or a broken window, that would be much easier to tag. The sounds of the sirens started to come down the street where the delivery van was, and the van was blocking the entrance. And Grant said, "Great, just when the cavalry's here, the entrance is blockaded for them to help. Luis, we're not going to be able to outrun that car." And Luis yelled back as they were running down the street, "I know. Too bad we can't call ahead and have somebody drop the portcullis and stop the car." That would be awesome. Boom! That'd be cool. All right, chapter 15. Okay. 672 words. Booyah! Love this. Okay, chapter 16. Here we go. The denouement. Okay. How do I want to end this? I was struggling with the ending, and in my books, sometimes Grant and Luis succeed in their action. Sometimes I have a dramatic win. Otherwise, I have what's called a Pyrrhic victory, where they win, but they lose. The cost is pretty darn high. I had that in my book, The Shepherd's Code. Yeah, the cost was really high. They got a win, but not really. In my book, Black Ice, it was a Pyrrhic victory, and win is sketchy at best. In The Last Echo, it was a mid-win. So I like morally gray books where there's not a clear answer, because life is never that easy. It's super messy. Not that it's gray like, oh, hey, I want to do evil. It's just, it makes for a lot more interesting reading than clearly black and white, good guy characters, bad guy characters, where my characters sometimes have to do stuff that it's a little bit sketch to get it done. And there's no time left in my Pomodoro. Good, perfect. Just the tiniest bit of sand left. Love that. Okay, so closing chapter. Here we go. Let's see, Iron Catacomb, chapter 16. As the car continued to careen down the road towards the intersection where everybody was taking photograph, Grant saw that they were getting outpaced. The car backed off. The driver clearly didn't want to start slamming bodies all around. Fortunately, the streets had started to clear and people heard the chaos and the peeling cars, and they started to push themselves into shops and get out of the way. There weren't many shops left. As Grant ran past as the duo ran past the armor shop, the man yelled out, "I've called the police. They should be on their way." And Grant nodded and waved as he ran by. But they saw that the car was making its way closer and closer to the famous corner where everybody takes their photo. And Luis said as they were running, "Dude, this is getting pretty serious. I am starting to get winded and I cannot keep my feet under me." And Grant said, "I know. This is not looking good. Plus our car is parked outside of the medieval city on the other side. What are we going to do?" Grant said, "I have no idea. I'm going to have to punch up my phone, but it's raining so hard. I don't know if we're going to do this without stopping." And they saw the car peeling farther and farther away from them, and it started honking its horn, and that forced the crowd to break apart, and even the people standing by the rain barrels at the intersection who were trying to get their Instagram photograph dodged out of the way. And just as they did that, the car was able to break free and it shot through the gate. Luis and Grant jogged for a short distance farther, and then they came to a stop, hands on their knees, breathing hard, steam coming from their bodies from the effort. I said, "Well, let's get on the horn and get a hold of the German police and also get a call into Justin at headquarters and let him know we got the item, or at least what we hope is the item. If there's anything left of it, those guys escaped, but at least we know where they were and we broke into their distribution system. So at least it was just good." Both men stepped to the side and into the alcove of a leather goods store and stood there, and Grant said, "Well, we might as well see what the heck we ended up with. Is there anything left?" And Grant said, "I hope so." So Luis held his arms out to act as a shelf while Grant set the duffel in his arms. And he said, "That's surprisingly light." And Grant said, "Yeah, I see that too." He unzipped the black duffel, which had gotten a couple tears in the melee, and he lifted out a wooden box, and Luis strapped the duffel around his shoulder and then held his arms out to grab the box carefully, and they unlatched the simple catch latch and opened it, and just as they opened it, lightning streaked across the sky, creating a flash, sparkling the gold shimmering inside. Inside the box was laying a funerary mask from Syria that had been cracked, but it was nestled in a nest of hay, protecting it. Both men stood and stared for a moment as the lightning and thunder continued to, the lightning flashed once again, lighting up the mask like some eerie monster inside of a dark wooden box. And then the thunder reverberated through the buildings. Luis looked in it and said, "Well, at least we got this." And Grant said, "Yeah, we're still in the dark, but at least we've got the prize, and we're not totally at a loss now." There we go. Now, that's going to take some editing. That was not totally awesome. That's not quite how I envisioned it. But now that I've got some text, another 662 words, ooh, I love this. That we've got pretty good chance for success. Not bad. Okay, so I'm going to back this up. Hopefully the backup works because it desynchronized for a moment. And there you go. So I got a full Pomodoro done. Downloading the file list. Uh-oh. Having technological issues. Perfect. I never have tech issues, and then all of a sudden I have tech issues while I'm doing a live stream. It's pretty funny. Open it anyway. Don't want any file corruptions. So there you go. I knocked out. I'll just add it up for you. I was able to knock out 601 plus 587 plus 643 plus 668 plus 672 plus 662 words. Boom! Now, that was one Pomodoro. Of course, I've been talking to you the whole time. Ooh, I love that sparkly. One Pomodoro, and I was able to crank out 3,833 words. Obviously, that needs a lot of editing, but that's how I do my books. I dictate them, and then I can get that energy. I'm kind of like worn out from dictating that sort of thing. Normally, I would do 5,000 words, but I'm done with this outline, so I need to start doing the editing process and get that going, and I'm also working on finishing up the polishes on the Bone Road so I can get that released. But now that I have Iron Catacomb ready, it's ready in the store, I'll be able to sequence this and start dropping these books relatively soon for you. So is there anything else on the stream? Nope. That is it. Thank you very much for watching my live stream. Please stop by my store, store.aaronrlinsdau.com, where you can find all my books, and check out my website, aaronrlinsdau.com, and learn about me and my books and what I bring to you. And also check out my pen name, aaronbelsing.com. That's where I write my romance under as well. There's a whole story of why I do that, having a pen name. It's all complicated, but there's reasons for it. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned. More to come.